Namo Myoho Renge Kyo, Namo Myoho Renge Kyo, Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Hi, everyone. I hope this finds you in good health and safe. I'm not sure if this might be useful as a standalone video. Not sure it'll be very long, though. There's a question that pops up in my mind, and I'm sure in anyone who practices Buddhism. I want to try to address it today in a positive way. I don't know, it's not the right word. Anyway, you'll understand in a moment. The question is this: why so many Buddhisms? Yeah? People who don't know Buddhism will often ask me, oh, have you visited the temple in such and such city, or the this and that? And to the uninitiated, and even many Buddhist practitioners, a Buddhist temple is a Buddhist temple. Doesn't matter if it's a Vietnamese Theravada temple, or if it's what do you mean Theravada? What's that? Well, there are different forms of Buddhism. Oh? Right? People, there's still to this day, in 2023, a tremendous amount of lack of knowledge about the world's philosophies, practices, religions, right? Hey, here in North America, rhetorically, culturally, in every commercial, and believe me, every form of broadcast, Christianity, or some form of it, is laced into everything. And consequently, if you ask the typical North American, or even Central American, right? Mexico, and quite vastly South American. So the whole American continent, not U.S. American, they've co-opted that word, but all of the Americas, yeah? If you ask them, what's a Muslim? You're likely to get some really weird responses. And Buddhists, because rhetorically, culturally, we don't pose a threat, right? So Buddhists don't go around arming themselves to the cause. Generally, there's just this lightheaded kind of confusion. And, oh yeah, Buddhists, I know that term. Anyway, why do I bring this up? Because for you and I, actual Buddhists, people, and by the way, congratulations and thank you for your continued practice as a Buddhist. It can be an annoying kind of can't get the dirt off my shoe kind of thing when there's so little understanding, even amongst other Buddhists, why? And you know I hate that question, why? So let's convert that. Instead of why so many Buddhisms, let's ask a more reasonable question, as a Buddhist would endeavor to do. And that is, how? How are there so many Buddhisms when we're all supposedly operating off of the same individual, the same teachings, the same insights, many in body, one in mind, all right? One. We read this, we intellectualize it. So how is it that there's such a disperse and a great disparity amongst teachers, schools of Buddhism? It's a reasonable question. And for myself, and you're going to hear my response to that from where I sit in modern Buddhism, right? Identified as a Nichiren lineage Buddhist school, Sangha. So right away, that individuates us from the Theravada, the Hinayana, the right? The Tibetan. And so this is maybe more to the point, because these are some pretty steadfast traditions of Buddhism. And I think that's where the key lies. Okay? We have the potential, as Shakyamuni said, you and I, bodhisattvas of the earth, coming into the future, are the time and capacity, mental fortitude and perceptive capacity to get this singular insight that Shakyamuni had. We can get it, but that doesn't mean we will, not automatically. We can, but remember, we talk about something all the time. I certainly do. This samsaric obstacle, the samsaric mind, which isn't a bad mind. It is, after all, emergent of a tremendous amount of energies amalgamating to ultimately create this apparatus, the entire universe, but this human apparatus that can emerge a mind. So what kind of mind do you think would emerge from such a tremendous force, amalgam of energies instantiating from potential? Well, it's going to manifest a mind of that very same energy. An energy that wants to be. And here's the little rub. This is what Shakyamuni was identifying. Is that the moment something instantiates, it wants to remain. Or at very least, continue to instantiate. That's an incredibly powerful thing. You could say the reason we exist is because of that very powerful thing, that desire to be. It's described in the Nidana, all the way back to the Hinayana teachings, right? But Shakyamuni was identifying that and teaching that, not because he wanted people to adhere to that. He was trying to point out how adhered automatically we are to that, and how that is the source of our pain, suffering, anxiety. But herein lies my first point. The people of 26, 27 centuries ago, they weren't thinking about you and I. I mean, all the obvious cues, right? Television, cell phones, advertising, fashion, clothing, identity was not so specific and individual, moment to moment, an important thing in that day. Identity was largely cultural and caste, right? This is India. My identity is I'm a one of those. So consequently, the thinking, the cultural mind, the zeitgeist, I don't know how many words we can approach this with, but certainly you could understand that the society at large, the society more specifically, listening to Shakyamuni, was one, fascinated. We can all relate to that. But two, searching in their mind of that day, time, and capacity for a way to understand, to inculcate the teachings of this great master, to carry them toward some other state of living, something they didn't yet understand. Their culture was bathed constantly in mysticism, magical animals, magical people that transmigrate from male to female, that are, right, Shiva Shakti, and on and on and on. Lots of magical things. This was reality for those people. So when Shakyamuni starts to break down how the mind works, they're not like scientists going, oh, the mind works like this, therefore. No, they heard, oh, the mind works like this, so that must be Shiva. That must be Shakti. Everything related to the mystical, magical world they were living in. Why do I go through such great pains to dissect this? I don't want to repeat it for every century, every 500-year period. I don't want to repeat it for every culture, Indian, Japanese, Chinese, Gandhara, so on and so forth. I'm relying on you to extrapolate here. But I want to make this point because if we're going to understand how there are so many Buddhisms, it's important to understand that there is only one. There is only one teaching of Shakyamuni Buddha, Buddha-ness. What this multitude of traditions is something different from Buddhism. And that's the first step of understanding that we as modern Buddhists need to kind of understand that others who call themselves Buddhists might only be following traditions of people who earnestly were trying to practice Shakyamuni's enlightenment, but they're following traditions of the time and the place, of the capacities of particular peoples that created their own network, their own scholarship of what they thought and how they applied what they heard from the teachings of Shakyamuni. Now, I'm trying to stay away from right and wrong here, but let's be clear. Traditions are traditions. They are based on social constructs, right? Cultural, racial, all of the social, they are based, in short, on samsaric identification. And now, if you've been listening to me for any length of time, you understand this is the big dividing line. This is what identifies Shakyamuni's actual teaching versus opinions, traditions, misunderstanding, erroneous views. And Nichiren's pointing this out all the time, isn't he? You've gone astray because you've forgotten that the teaching is one thing outside of the samsaric hold, the samsaric identifying ego, self, And yet you're calling it a form, a Buddhism, when in fact it's only a small step on the way to realizing why, in fact, it isn't Buddhism. That what you're doing is misplaced. That you're actually taking something perfect and you're disguising it and actually betraying it because you've identified it with all this other socio-political, cultural fodder, which is antithetical, actually totally opposite to what Shakyamuni was teaching. But they don't see that because of the traditions, hundreds of years of tradition. And Nichiren points this out. He points this out in Japan. How certain traditions came into Japan. Great scholars like Dengyo totally obviated and dismantled those misunderstandings and traditional obstacles. And yet, as soon as Dengyo's gone, they start creeping right back in. Now, you could read words like evil and negative and all of that in the literature. These are Western people applying their cultural norms and their upbringings, right? Which, as I identified all of the Americas, there's going to be that slant. It's just part of the way the tongue works. Yeah? But that doesn't make it true. As Buddhists, the only thing we're concerned about is truth. The clear truth, not some version of it. Now, a lot of Buddhists are going to feel insulted that I said that. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to hurt anyone's feelings. Believe me. Nichiren wasn't trying to hurt anyone's feelings, but he was almost beheaded for opening his mouth. The emperor is naked. Look! Right? You may not like that I'm pointing that out, but there it is. I'm not inventing this. I'm not sparring with others. I'm simply pointing at, dude, the fat guy doesn't have any clothes on. Can we agree? Please? All of the other stuff, that's tradition, not Buddhism. But it's hard to argue that with people. Some people have grown up with those traditions but this is what Shakyamuni was in the midst of in his own day. You don't think Shakyamuni had threats on his life? Hell yeah, from his own relatives. We read about it in the sutras. People don't like to be confronted with actual facts when they have spent so much time, when we have spent so much time, identifying our very sense of self with illusions. If you buy into an illusion for 40 years of your life, and somebody points out that it's an illusion, it can be very traumatic. Which is exactly why Shakyamuni talked about this, that you, whether you're 10 years old, 40 years old, 90 years old, you have to dismantle your own collection, the warehouse of identifications you've created for yourself. Only you can dismantle those, pierce through those, to see with clarity for yourself. So, the question isn't why are there so many Buddhisms? There is only one. The question is, how are those so many erroneous views identifying themselves as Buddhism. This could be painful. It can be very confrontational. Somebody practicing for decades, and you're standing there telling them, "You're not doing it right." What? Who are you to tell me? Well, it's not me telling you. It's Buddha telling you. It's Nichiren telling you. It's Dengyo telling you. It's Miao Lo. It's Tendai. It's Nagarjuna. These scholars, they were very clear. But traditions, boy, they don't back down easily. Because they're the fabric of identification. And isn't that the whole crux of what Shakyamuni was teaching us? It is that very thing of identification that causes our stress and anxiety and suffering. It becomes so clear. Certainly, if you study Nichiren's letters and teachings, it may appear quickly to you. It may take a great deal of time. My greatest motivator for drawing another breath is to be the kid in the crowd pointing at the emperor saying, "Look, it's not my fault that the emperor is naked. I want to help you see clearly what's going on here." And in my view, I'm doing exactly what Nichiren has told me to do. I'm emulating his adherence, his tenacity, his constant calling out, along with backing it up with, not my opinion, this is what Shakyamuni wrote, look. This is what Tendai wrote, look. This is what Dengyo said, look. That's what Nichiren does. Nichiren never says, in fact, we just read from Nichiren's own writings, translations, but still, I did not invent this. This is Nichiren. I didn't create this. This is what it is. Some people call Nichiren a great reformer, but Nichiren wouldn't call himself a reformer. He would call himself a big hello, a clarifier, look at what forget the traditions that so-and-so said you had to wear this kind of hat and this kind of makeup in order to do this. What is it you're trying to do? Look. All that other stuff, not only not required, it's getting in the way. I was just thinking of some old expressions I came up with in my youth, but it doesn't matter. Does this make sense? Am I making sense to you? Is Nichiren making sense to you? You need to know, and the reason I'm talking about this is one reason only, as always, to assist you in your confidence. Because when you're practicing something, I don't care if it's piano or flute or sport or whatever, you're endeavoring to do the best that you can do. Yes? And when there are a variety of others claiming expertise or knowledge that is greatly deviant from what your teacher, your impression, your idea of what you're doing is, it creates doubt, right? Doesn't it affect your confidence? Am I doing this right or am I fooling myself? Well, How could there be, not why, how could there be so many others who claim to be right? Maybe, just maybe, I don't know what I'm doing. My friends, we've been talking about that. Nichiren's been talking about that. Don't let this doubt take hold. Solve it. See through it. Pierce it. Destroy it as quickly as possible. Because it will eat away at you. It will become an obstacle. It will manifest in some way to become an obstacle to your enlightenment. How can you tolerate that? Don't. And so, by endeavoring to clarify this, to give you tools in your mind of data warehouse, to always remember, oh yeah, it's not that these are bad people. It's not that they're enemies of me. Though we use the rhetoric, they are enemies of Buddha, because Buddha is not a person. They are getting in the way. They are creating, manifesting a very elaborate obstacle to the simplicity of invoking Buddha. Namo Myo Renge Kyo. So please be confident. That's the only thing that I'm posting this podcast video for, to remind you, there are going to be dissenting voices. There always have been. But that does not diminish what you're trying to accomplish in your own mind, existence, being. Okay? Be confident. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. And with that confidence, we can develop maybe a little compassion, a little pity for those who are misled. But we need to demonstrate, right, the success of the correct one practice of Buddhism, the Lotus Sutra. Please be confident in that. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your support. Like and subscribe. Share. Not with a stick, but with a loving kindness, yes? Yeah. Oh, I know. Oh, I know who I'm going to send this video to. Don't do that. That's contention. We don't want that. We want assistance, support, demonstrate. Don't engage someone simply to argue. Now, if it's somebody that wants to practice with you and they're bringing inappropriate traditions into it and trying to create doubt, foment doubt, well, that's time for shakubuku. That's what shakubuku is for. No. You're not going to be practicing Namo Myoho Renge Kyo and bringing this bull crap into it. Get it straight in your mind. Read this Gosho, watch that video, listen to this podcast. Right? Listen to what Nichiren is saying here, what Shakyamuni is saying. That's appropriate. But, if there's a neighbor or a friend and they're practicing some Ulawi Buddhism, don't look for contention, but be prepared to stand with confidence. Right? That is closer to shoju, because it means you need to be an exemplar. You need to call, no, we don't. That's incorrect. If you want to sit down and talk about it, we can chant first. But please, Don't push your agenda, this traditions that you've observed, onto my practice of Buddhism. Don't do it. It's insulting. Yeah, I won't tolerate it. Sorry. Does that preclude our friendship? Well, that's up to you. I'm always open to demonstrate with clarity. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Listen to this. Read this. How can you... This is how Nichiren talks about what you're suggesting. How can you not see that? Well, first of all, credit to that friend or person that you know for even listening that far, right? They got to get past opening their Gohonzon mind with chanting first. If they can't do that, then I'm sorry, go practice your tradition. Call it whatever you like, but it's not going to affect me. I am practicing Shakyamuni's teaching on self-enlightenment, One Buddhism. All right, I'm repeating myself now, but I wanted to make, I don't think I've ever talked about it in this way, and I understand it's one of those creepy, crawly little voices out there that, well, none of us likes confrontation, really, so we probably never really address it, and I thought, I should probably take leadership in that and go ahead and say it. It's a simple thing, really, and it's not that hard to understand. People, our human identification makes opinions of everything we experience. And those opinions are based on what we think is right or true or whatever adjective you want to put there. But when it comes to Buddhism, there's only one. Any deviation from that, well, that's tradition. That's something else. That's identity. That's samsara. That's ego. And fighting ego, yeah, many wars have come from fighting egos, yeah? All right, so I'm going to thank you again for your practice. I hope I made this somewhat clearer for you if you ever considered what the deal was there. And if you have some questions about anything I've said, let me know. I keep searching my mind. These are all ad lib, right? I don't script this out. So maybe there's a glaring hole in what I said and I need to address it. Let me know. Because we can't let doubt fester. It becomes a tremendous obstacle of our own making, but tremendous nonetheless, yeah? All right. So write me an email. Use the comments. We'll get through this. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Thanks again. Thank you for your support, liking and subscribing, your financial support, buying ebooks or print books or through Patreon, PayPal. Thank you so much. And now I'll move back into Nichiren on Karma. All right. Thanks. Bye for now.